In the hospital, when you work, sometimes even for patients, getting up, it's exercise. You have a specialized field in physio, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I work in the neurology field and physiotherapy, which also it's not a very well-known field, I guess, in physio. And what that means is I work with people post-stroke or after they've had a traumatic brain injury or they've had some sort of issues with their nerve damage. And so generally the presentation is that they have a lot more illness and disability than someone who, say, sprained their ankle or broke a bone. And so these types of physiotherapists can work in the hospital setting, right after someone had a stroke and they went to a hospital, to what I also do in outpatient private practice is, they've kind of gone through the hospital setting and they've gone home now, but they still want to get back to things that are important to them. They're not quite back to what they were before the stroke or before the brain injury. And so a lot of what we do in the hospital setting is kind of making sure that people are safe to go home. So we have to ask them about what their home environment looks like. Do they have a house with stairs or do they live in an elevator? So if they can't walk, can they use a wheelchair to go back home? And I think a lot of people don't realize that physiotherapists, it's not just when you're working in the hospital system, it's not just the client that you're working with the whole team. So you're working with the doctors, you're working with the speech therapist, you're working with the occupational therapist to try to create a comprehensive plan to get this person home safely. And then if they can't, then we also have to do a lot of planning to sort out, well, what's the best thing for them afterwards? And I think you don't work in isolation in the hospital, and that's what I really like about it. And that's why I want to stay in, part-time private and part-time public, so I get that continuity of care and have that team that I can work with. A lot of times people, I think in the hospital too, they think, okay, you're the physio, like give me some exercises to do so I can get stronger. And then we'll do a session and then they'll tell their family, oh, I just sat up. Or like, I just stood up for physio. Like, we didn't really do a lot of exercise. Like, yeah, that's actually exercise. So a large part of what I do is kind of explaining this is considered exercise and it's important for you to move, especially in the hospital, and you've become so weak. It's actually every day that you lie in bed is actually 1% of your muscle mass that's lost. So it's pretty significant if you think about, population that's old and frail. If they're losing muscle mass, it just makes it harder for them to get stronger, to get up again, to walk, and to manage things that they used to be able to do independently before.
So you have 100 days. If you lie in the bed for 100 days, there's no muscles?
Yeah, pretty much. I think they did a study with NASA where they looked at that. Like they were in space and then, or they were trying to figure out what happens because anti-gravity, you don't have as much. And it was, something like 1% a day. And so if you think about it, after 10 or 15 days, you can get considerably weaker. And there's actually, a lot of work looking at the role of physiotherapists in the ICU. And, people are very sick there and sometimes they're in bed for a really long time. They're not really moving. So trying to get physios in the ICU early on, get them moving early on so that they don't have as much muscle weakness and muscle loss, during their hospital stay in those critical periods.